welcome to the David Icke Videocast. This time on the northwest coast of England, where I'm going to be speaking this weekend in Southport. And it's a pretty grim day, though Southport's a lovely place. And I sit here in a hotel room pondering on the insanity that we call the world. I've been talking for decades about the fact that the world is run by psychopaths and liars. And in fact, if you look at the character trait definitions of the word psychopath, one of them is that they are pathological liars. And as this global conspiracy for the centralized fascist global dictatorship moves closer and closer to its goal, we see coming to the surface ever more obviously these basic, obvious, blatant facts. The world is run by psychopaths and liars. And there is another major trait, perhaps the major trait of psychopaths in the list of psychopathic traits that are known as the hair test. And that is the incapacity for psychopaths to manifest the emotional response we know as empathy. Empathy being the ability to put yourself in the feelings of those who you affect. To do what these psychopaths do, mass murder of the innocent, year after year, decade after decade, indeed century after century, you must have the incapacity for empathy, or the effects of what you do would be emotionally overpowering. But think on this. If you have no ability for empathy, thus no emotional consequence for whatever you do, there are no limits. And that is the mentality running our world, the mentality we have allowed to run our world. By often indifference, by often it's not my problem, what is happening somewhere else. And most of all, by allowing these psychopaths to divide and rule the target global population. So it is fighting within itself along ever more fault lines, which allows the psychopaths, the very few, to run world events and dictate the direction of human society. And when I talk about psychopaths, yes, I am talking about world leaders, your Trumps and your Macrons and your military leaders, your Mattises and all the rest. But they are still the gophers for psychopaths in the shadows that would make the political psychopaths look like Sunday school teachers. we have a system, a situation, whereby a hidden hand of almost indescribable psychopathic extremes dictating to psychopaths in the public arena who appear to be in control, appear to be making decisions, but aren't really. That's why the decisions are so unbelievably predictable once you know what the desired outcome of the hidden hand is planned to be. So on that level of the psychopaths of the scene, you have people like Trump and these other ludicrous people who talk about we must bomb this country, we must bomb here, we must respond. And all of them, if they were at the front line when the first bullet was fired, they would be under the bed at their mum's house by the time the second bugger went off. All this bravado, no. We will be sipping coffee in Downing Street and the White House. Other people will do it. And even more important, other people will be on the end of them. On the end of the we must respond, as we're seeing now with this nonsense over Syria. And psychopaths also have very selective minds. So they will plan to launch an attack on Syria because they want rid of the leader, Assad, because we can't let this happen to the children. And yet the same people have bombed, killed, maimed, untold thousands, tens of thousands of men, women and children with brown faces all over the Middle East year after year after year, and they are now still supplying weapons to psychopaths like the Saudi royal family to create catastrophe, not least for children, in the war on Yemen. When the Israeli government and army think it's fine to shoot unarmed Palestinians, and the defense minister, Lieberman, says that people who do it should get a medal. Where is the condemnation then, Mr. Israel-owned Trump and the rest of them? Nowhere. Because it's selective, and this is why it's selective. The scale of pathological lying that we are seeing in relation to this alleged chemical attack blamed on President Assad in Syria, and the pathological lying that is surrounding the nerve agent attack on the Russian agent, double agent actually, who's working for Britain, and his daughter in Salisbury, England. This pathological lying is absolutely what you would expect from psychopaths. Because another trait of psychopaths is that they do whatever it takes to get what they want. And lies to justify actions that you want therefore, is part of do whatever it takes. And the desperation to create a conflict with Russia, which I've been writing about, that this was the plan for decades, and to remove President Assad from Syria. The desperation to do that is such that basically any lie will do. But fortunately, the lies have become so transparent and so outrageously blatant that more and more people are not buying it, and they are starting to come to terms with the fact that their world is indeed run by psychopaths and liars on a scale that most of them, until recently, would never have contemplated. And this resistance from ever-gathering numbers of people in not buying the lie has made them ever more desperate. And so the lies have got more ridiculous. But like I say, there's a reason for all that's going on now, and a background that can explain all that's happening now, why the lies, why the targeting of certain people and countries. I've told this story many times, but vast numbers of people have still not heard it, and they need to hear it to understand current events. In the 1990s, an organization was created in the United States called the Project for the New American Century. It was co-founded by two extreme Zionists called Robert Kagan and William Crystal. And in the Project for the New American Century were people like Dick Cheney, who would be the vice president, the president in truth, during the years of Boy George Bush. There was Donald Rumsfeld. He would be the defense secretary running the Pentagon in the Bush administration. Paul Wolfowitz, another extreme Zionist, would be his deputy, and actually the one with the real power. The Pentagon would be run, while Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld were in charge. The Pentagon would be run by a man called Dov Zakheim in terms of the whole Pentagon budget, because he was comptroller. Dov Zakheim was a member of the Project for the New American Century. So was another man, the Hawk's Hawk, the extremist called John Bolton. And these people produced a document in September 2000 in which they called for America to fight, quote, multiple theater wars. And they named the regimes in the Middle East that they wanted those wars to overturn. And they were Iraq, Libya, Syria, Iran, Lebanon, North Korea, leading to, quote, regime change in China. A few months after those people wrote that document, they went into government, or were the people in the shadows pulling the strings of the government of Boy George Bush. 9 months after they came to power with Bush, America had what was called at the time by Bush our Pearl Harbor, 9/11. And 9/11, those attacks were the trigger that started the process of picking off these countries on the list targeted by the Project for the New American Century. And interestingly, this document in September 2000 also said that this process of transformation, as they called it, or this regime change in these countries they named, would be a slow process absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. And 9 months, like I say, after they came to power with Bush, they had what Bush called our Pearl Harbor 9/11, which started off the sequence of regime change. Now, if there's anyone out there that believes that all that is a coincidence, especially when the 9/11 official story is so full of holes, it's shocking that anyone could believe it. If anyone believes that all that is a coincidence, well, they deserve a lifetime membership of Naivety Anonymous. So, we move on. People like General Wesley Clark, former Supreme Commander of NATO, a war criminal himself in the Balkans, he's gone public in an interview and in other situations to say that he was told immediately after 9/11 by a friend of his, a general in the Pentagon, that they were going to regime change and invade country after country after country in the wake of 9/11. And what were those countries? The very same countries listed by the Project for the New American Century. So, the agenda that we're now seeing continuing to unfold with this situation surrounding Syria at the moment has been planned all along, and it doesn't matter what politicians are in power or what party they come from or what they said they would do in their election campaign. The same agenda has unfolded incessantly because they are here today, gone tomorrow people. And what's driving the direction of the world, what's driving world events is not them. Just puppets and pawns. Psychopathic ones, yes, but still. Puppets and pawns. What's driving it is the hidden hand that's always there, whoever is in power. So, you had Bush, Republican, and Tony Blair, another psychopathic, pathological liar, Labour Party in Britain, and they started the sequence going when they invaded Iraq based on a lie. Did I say they were pathological liars? I think I might have mentioned it. Then they move away, then they go away, and other people come in. Oh, this is different now. Oh, different. We've got a Democrat now, and he's a Democrat. Ooh, he's about change. He is Barack Obama. Oh, and we've got this waste of space Conservative Party Prime Minister, David Cameron. He's not in the same party as Blair. So they're all different now. And they pick off Libya on the list, removing Gaddafi, again based on lies and funding and arming the so-called rebels, which were just proxy armies for the West, particularly America, and Britain too. And they've turned Libya into an absolute catastrophe. Then, having used the excuse of invading Libya on the basis of Gaddafi's killing his own people. And this is very quickly how it works. You fund and arm rebels, actually your proxy army, and you get them to start attacking government targets of the regime you want to remove. At that point, everyone is silent. Media silent. Politicians silent. Shh. And then the government, if you like, returned fire. And at that point, no one can get to a microphone quick enough. He's killing his own people. We must protect them. Yes, in Libya, we must protect the innocent from violence by bombing them from the sky. Psychopaths and pathological liars run the world. And so, having done that with Gaddafi, they go and play the same trick on Assad in Syria. They arm and fund the rebels. Britain was big time involved in this, as you can see in detail in my books. And when Assad returned fire, he's killing it, and you know the rest of it. Now, it was going swimmingly as we come round to current events. These countries were being picked off. The hidden hand was drinking champagne at every time another mass murder took place that got them closer to regime change. But then the Russians came in, because Putin could see where this was going. He's talked about this publicly in some interviews and press conferences. You could see where it was going. Another one was going to be picked off. Who was going to be next? Iran, because this was the sequence which this hidden hand was directing. And so Russians air support came in to support Assad, and if it hadn't, then Syria would now be run by ISIS, the proxy army of the West. But instead of continuing its advance across Syria, as it was while the American Air Force and military were claiming to be trying to challenge them, but you've got the by a staggering amount, the biggest military in the world, and you can't push these people back. They keep advancing across Syria. What are you doing? But then the Russians came in and actually tried to push them back. And what happened? They were pushed back and have basically now virtually been pushed out of Syria. So it's all gone in terms of Syria, seriously pear-shaped. The agenda of America, Britain, the West, and Israel, never forget Israel. The elephant, no, it's not the elephant in the living room, it's the herd of them in the living room. In terms of all this, it had gone pear-shaped. Assad was not being removed. It's their proxy army that had been removed. And so you play the card again and again. They've tried it about 3 times now, where either there is a genuine chemical attack or is the fake one. And you say, it's Assad. We've got to remove Assad. We need to react to this, and Assad's a monster. What? Like the guy who is running Saudi Arabia, this Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, fully paid up member of Psychopaths Anonymous. Anything to say about him? Well, yeah, we want to sell him more arms. Thank you. But Assad, monster. Why? They don't want rid of Salman in Saudi Arabia. He's doing as he's told. They want rid of Assad, who's not. And so the lies get more ludicrous because the situation in terms of Syria for these psychopaths gets more desperate. And so, as with the Salisbury situation, we are told it's Assad and it's the Russians, without any evidence to support those statements whatsoever. And it's the old Nazi technique, appropriately by the way, of tell the lie often enough and people will believe it. Fortunately, more and more people are not. And so you say that there's been a chemical attack, and you can't produce the evidence, but you say people on the ground have said so. Who are these people on the ground? They are terrorist groups that have themselves used chemical weapons and been exposed for doing so against the Kurds. And they are a group called the White Helmets. Oh, the White Helmets, they're lovely people. They're first responders. Yes, only in terrorist areas. White Helmets, who are funded by the West, funded by America, and have been exposed for not even being good at staging fake attacks and chemical attacks. These are the White Helmets who've staged attacks, and suddenly some of the corpses have opened their bloody eyes. These are the White Helmets where you see someone in a terrible situation because of some attack, and not long afterwards he's having a selfie with his mates. These are the sources on which Trump and his other psychopaths want to go to war, not just with Assad to remove him because they've got to get him off that list, but also with Russia, for reasons I'll come to in a second. And look who Trump now has around him. You know Trump, the man who in his election campaign said that he would stop intervening in the affairs of other countries militarily? Sure he would. Telling his audience what he wants to hear. People in the alternative media in America bought it with a naivety that's breathtaking, thinking he was different. You must be joking. What were you thinking, you silly people? And as a result, he's now doing everything the alternative media in America once stood against. And that's not all the alternative media in America, but it is a significant chunk of it. So Trump now has around him a man so psychopathic running the Pentagon, James Mattis, that he has the nickname Mad Dog. Another empathy deleted psychopath running the American military. He has nominated a guy called Mike Pompeo, who was CIA chief, to be the new Secretary of State, running foreign policy from now on at the State Department. Another warmonger psychopath with empathy deleted. And he is just appointed as his national security advisor, John Bolton. A man like Tony Blair who has never seen a country he did not want to bomb. Never seen harmony he did not want to turn into death, destruction, and chaos. And people say, oh no, it's people around Trump that are doing it. Trump has to appoint John Bolton. He didn't have to, he has. Because Trump too is a psychopath, a narcissistic psychopath. And now we have Theresa May and her pathetic cabinet doing the same. Oh yes, oh we must respond to these attacks. The same Theresa May that says there's no other explanation for the Salisbury attack when there's endless other possibilities. Bloody liar. And Macron, Emmanuel Macron, little boy in short trousers in France. Oh yes, what he said this week. Oh, I have evidence that Assad carried out the chemical attack. Oh really? You're the only one on planet Earth who has then. Let's see it. And the reason they all act in unison every time, same script, same response, same we must bomb somebody or other, is because there is a global web run by this hidden hand. And the American government's attached to it, the British government's attached to it, the French government's attached to it, and so on and so forth. And that web has been pushing the world, again as I've been writing for so long, towards World War III. They want a war between the West, basically NATO, the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization, a war with NATO against Russia, China, Iran, with others thrown in. And so we have had it's the Russians demonization of Russia, incessant, so incessant, it's bordering on the vaudeville. And so you've had Salisbury, and immediately after this, yes, it's chemical weapons, and the Russians, they're the allies of Assad, they're to blame as well, all this stuff. Because they want World War III. And they want World War III to complete the process of taking over the world, to introduce their centralized global fascist dictatorship in which no one is able any longer to challenge them. That's what this is all about. How it will turn out this time, we will see. Where it goes from here, we will see. But I've been consistent decade after decade. What they want is a third world war between the West and Russia, China, Iran, and anyone who are allies of them. And we get closer and closer and closer all the time. And if it was not for the good sense and the maturity, my God, how rare that is in politics, the maturity of the Russian government, people like the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, that war would almost certainly have happened already. Why do you think NATO have been incessantly building up troops and weapons all along the Russian border? And endless other things that have been going on, preparing for war against Russia. This is the real background to what is happening this week. And these lies are designed to push on to that end. And of course, Russia cannot forever ignore what is happening, to the point where at some point it is going to have to respond. Otherwise, these people will just overrun the whole situation without a bullet being fired. And at that point, we are looking World War III in the eye, which has been the plan all along. No matter what they're here today, gone tomorrow, politicians of different parties have said and claim to stand for the same incessant move to this goal of World War III has continued. We need to take power back to the billions who are dictated to by these psychopaths and pathological liars. From the morons like Trump, from the moronic British cabinet, that is so disdainful of the public that it appoints a monumental buffoon called Boris Johnson as its foreign secretary. A man who, if he had a brain cell on active duty, it would die of loneliness. We have a man-child, Gavin Williamson, as Defence Secretary at this time. I always wonder when I look at him if his mum knows he's out. She'd be worried. These are the people that we, the people, have allowed to run our world. Truly, truly useful idiots run by the force in the shadows that we never see, but whose agenda we are constantly taking the consequences of. This is the background to what's happening. And everything else is diversion and cover for these simple facts.